If you want to know how quickly a life can turn to ash, drive north of Santa Fe when the wind is wrong and the clouds rumble over the mesas. On the day the fire came, it started with a single lightning strike. At least that's what the official report would say. But in Taos, New Mexico, people know lightning is never just lightning. And sometimes what you see burning is only the end of something that's been smoldering for years. It was dawn when the first smoke rolled through the Reyes Ranch, curling between the pinon and juniper and turning the blue morning gray. The fire moved fast, hungry, reckless, unstoppable, fueled by a week of dry winds and the stubborn grass that clung to the arroyo banks. Within minutes, flames had swallowed the old barn, the tack room, the hay shed, and the edge of the fence line. Animals scattered, some barely escaping, their shadows flickering against the firelit haze. The smell was thick. Burning hair, scorched leather, the bitter tang of gasoline lingering beneath the natural chaos. Amid the shouting and sirens, in the whir of helicopter blades above, nobody noticed the small shape huddled behind the crumpled lean-to, shielded by what remained of a scorched tarp. Not at first. When they'd finally found him, the flames had licked within feet of his hiding spot. His name was Ethan Reyes. 6 years old, brown-haired, eyes too big for his face. He didn't scream or cry, just sat there with his knees pulled to his chest, his cheeks streaked with soot and tears, hands locked around a piece of burned leather. Deputy Lauren Tate was the first to kneel beside him, her boots sinking into ash, the taste of smoke in her mouth. She spoke softly, like she would to a wild foal. "Hey there, kid. You're safe now. I got you." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't even blink, just kept squeezing that half-melted tag in his fist, the only thing not burned beyond recognition. Lauren pried it gently from his grip, turning it over in her palm. The name Dusty was stamped into the leather, the edges blackened but legible. She looked from the tag to the boy's vacant stare, and a heavy worry gnawed at her gut. Out here, a ranch kid's first best friend was always a horse. Behind them, what was left of the barn collapsed with a groan, sending up a new cloud of embers. The Reyes family, mother, grandmother, a couple of ranch hands, rushed toward Ethan, voices breaking, arms wide. He didn't move. Lauren wrapped a blanket around him, feeling the heat of the fire seep through her jacket, feeling Ethan shiver in a way that had nothing to do with cold. "Is Dusty?" his mother asked, eyes wild, searching the smoke for a familiar mane. But Ethan just closed his eyes, drawing silent. The answer was written all over his face. The blaze gutted everything in its path. By midday, the main house was little more than a shell. Fire crews lined the arroyos. Helicopters dipped into distant ponds. The air reeked of wet ash and loss. Reporters circled, hungry for a story. "Lightning strike," the chief announced for the cameras, but Lauren saw the hesitation in his eyes. When the dust settled and the fire was finally declared out, the real questions began. Lauren walked the blackened perimeter, boots crunching through cooled cinders, replaying the scene in her mind. It didn't add up. The speed of the fire, the pattern of burn marks, the faint trace of accelerant she thought she smelled near the barn door. She took out her notebook, jotting down details nobody else bothered to notice. Her job wasn't just to put out fires. It was to ask, why they started in the first place. That's when she heard the name, Cole Turner. Someone whispered it at the edge of the crowd, and suddenly everyone seemed to remember the old feuds. Fence lines moved in the night, fights over water rights, nasty words exchanged at the feed store. Cole was a loner, a horseman with a checkered past, scars on his hands, and a record of arson from 10 years back. He'd worked the Reyes Ranch once, before getting run off after an argument. Lauren tucked the name away like a match, waiting to be struck. The investigators worked quickly. They called it an accident, but Lauren kept poking, kept asking questions. Why had Ethan been hiding out back, not in the house? Who'd left the tarp, and why did nobody see him until the fire was almost done? The answers were always vague, like smoke slipping through her fingers. Ethan, meanwhile, stayed silent. Doctors called it selective mutism, a fancy term for a child too shocked to speak. He barely ate, barely slept, eyes fixed on something nobody else could see. The only thing he held on to was the saddle tag, the last piece of Dusty. No one knew exactly what happened in those terrifying minutes except Ethan, and he wasn't talking. The ranch was gone. Insurance adjusters hovered, neighbors dropped off casseroles, and the Reyes family moved in with relatives on the edge of town. Still, the shadow of the fire lingered, curling under doors and slipping through dreams. Lauren checked in on Ethan every day. She brought him new boots, a set of toy horses, a sketch pad with colored pencils. He thanked her with silence, but she noticed the way his fingers curled around the burnt leather, the way his breath hitched when someone mentioned Cole Turner's name in passing. Then came the nightmares, screams in the night, muffled sobs. He'd wake up gasping, calling out words only he could understand, clutching the tag like it was a life raft. His grandmother, Maria, called Lauren one evening, her voice tight with worry. "He needs help," Maria said. "Not just medicine. He needs to see a horse again. Maybe then he'll remember how to talk." That's how Ethan ended up at a trauma care farm outside Taos, a place where broken children and broken animals tried to heal each other, one hesitant touch at a time. It wasn't much. An old barn, a field ringed by cottonwoods, a handful of volunteers. But for Lauren, it felt like hope. A small, stubborn thing, green as new grass poking through blackened earth. She watched as Ethan stood at the fence, staring at the pasture where the horses grazed, his eyes searching for something lost but not forgotten. In his hand, he still clutched the tag marked Dusty. The story of the fire wasn't over. Not yet. It had just begun. Underscore, 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 underscore. If you spend enough time around horses, you start to see that healing rarely happens all at once. It's not a miracle or a switch flipped by the right words. It's more like a slow thaw, a gradual return to trust, one small act of courage at a time. That's what Deputy Lauren Tate thought as she parked her dusty Tahoe outside the low wooden gates of the Rancho Cielo Recovery Center, north of Taos, a week after the fire. The morning was brisk, the air clearer here, scented faintly with sagebrush and the hint of manure. Past the weather-beaten fence, horses grazed quietly in the paddocks, their coats glinting in the sun, tails flicking at flies. This wasn't the kind of ranch where horses were expected to work for their keep. Here, every animal was retired, a survivor of something, just like the children sent to recover among them. Lauren signed in at the small office, exchanging greetings with the ranch manager, a wiry woman named Teresa, who carried herself with the weary kindness of someone who's seen more sorrow than joy. Lauren explained Ethan's case in as few words as she could. Teresa just nodded, glancing through the office window at the small boy sitting alone on a bench, his knees pulled up, arms tight around his chest, as if he was trying to hold himself together. "He doesn't talk much," Lauren said. "Neither does Jasper," Teresa replied. "They might suit each other." The first time Lauren saw Jasper, she was struck by the size of him. A huge brown mustang, his shoulders broad and scarred, a white blaze slashing down his face. He kept his distance from the other horses, standing just beyond the shade of a cottonwood, his eyes alert, not fearful, but wary in a way that said he'd learned not to expect much from people. He watched Lauren with the flat, unreadable gaze and of a horse that has seen too much. "He was a patrol horse for the Forest Service," Teresa explained, keeping her voice low. "Worked the trails up in Carson. Last owner was Cole Turner." At the mention of Cole's name, Lauren's breath caught. Jasper flicked an ear, as if the sound meant something to him, too. "Cole didn't treat him well?" Lauren asked, though she already suspected the answer. Teresa shook her head, jaw tightening. "We got Jasper out of there," after the neighbors complained. "He was skin and bones, or wouldn't let anyone touch him for months. Now he's just, here. Eats, walks the fence line. Doesn't bother nobody. He won't let anyone ride. Won't even take a treat from your hand." Lauren gazed at the Mustang, wondering what had been taken from him and what might still be left to give. That afternoon, with Teresa's help, Lauren arranged a quiet visit for Ethan and Jasper. No big introduction, no fanfare, just the boy, the Mustang, and the long shadow of the barn. Teresa led Jasper into the paddock near Ethan's cabin, speaking softly, not forcing anything. Jasper stood, muscles taut, ears flicking, but didn't shy away as Ethan approached the fence. Ethan was cautious, barely moving, his eyes never leaving the horse. He didn't speak, just held the burnt saddle tag in his palm, his thumb tracing the name over and over. He sat down cross-legged in the patchy grass, close enough to smell the horse's earthy sweat and the wild tang in his mane. Jasper lowered his head, sniffing the air, nostrils flaring. For a long time, nothing happened. Just two souls occupying the same patch of sunlight, both broken in different ways, both silent. Lauren watched from the porch, holding her breath. After a while, Jasper took a single step forward, his hooves heavy and slow, then stopped. Ethan didn't flinch. In fact, if you looked close, you'd see his body relax, shoulders unclenching just a little, his knees dropping as if some deep-rooted fear had loosened its grip. He didn't try to touch the horse, just let Jasper come as close as he dared. The staff watched, whispering to each other, surprised. Jasper had never approached a new person so quickly. Teresa scribbled notes in a little book she kept, shaking her head in disbelief. Later, as the sun faded behind the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, Lauren walked with Ethan along the fence. She asked him quietly if he wanted to feed Jasper a carrot. Ethan shook his head, but didn't move away when Jasper nudged closer, his breath warm and heavy on the boy's hand. Lauren smiled, feeling hope flicker inside her for the first time since the fire. Back inside the ranch house, Teresa poured coffee and shared what she knew about Jasper's past. Cole Turner never cared for anyone but himself. That horse was just another thing for him to control. When Jasper stopped cooperating, he locked him up, barely fed him. Some folks say a horse can't hold a grudge, but I don't believe it. They remember every kindness, every cruelty. That's why I think he's drawn to Ethan. They know each other's pain. For the next few days, Lauren made a routine of bringing Ethan out to see Jasper. Sometimes Ethan sat and drew in his notebook. Sketches of horses, barns, and one morning, a wildfire sweeping across the page in orange crayon. Sometimes he just watched Jasper graze, silent but attentive. The horse circled the paddock, never straying far from the spot where Ethan waited. It became a quiet ritual. No need for words, no need for anyone else. The ranch staff began to notice subtle changes in both of them. Jasper, once standoffish, started hanging around Ethan's window, his shadow flickering across the glass as the boy woke from uneasy dreams. Teresa left the paddock gate open one afternoon, and Jasper wandered up to the porch, standing guard while Ethan napped inside. When Ethan woke, he pressed his face against the window, lips parting in the smallest of smiles. Lauren documented these moments in her notebook, careful not to disrupt the fragile bond. She still carried the weight of the investigation on her shoulders, reports to write, calls to make, evidence to gather. But here, in the company of a silent boy and a battered Mustang, she felt something changing. Not everything could be solved with handcuffs or court orders. Some things needed time and trust. And one morning, while Lauren waited on the porch, she heard footsteps behind her. Teresa handed her an old photo, faded at the edges, of Jasper in his patrol days. Alert, proud, a young ranger grinning from his back. He was a hero once, Teresa said. Maybe he can be again. That evening, as the sky burned pink and gold, Lauren found Ethan sitting by the fence, closer to Jasper than ever before. The Mustang lowered his head, blowing soft, warm air into Ethan's hair. For the first time since the fire, Ethan reached out, his fingers trembling, and brushed the horse's mane. Jasper stood perfectly still. Lauren wrote just one line in her notebook. First contact. No fear, progress. And as darkness settled over the ranch, it felt, for the first time in a long while, Like both the boy and the horse had found a reason to try again. Some people think healing means a single moment, a spark of light after the darkness, a word spoken that erases the silence. But real healing, especially for a child like Ethan and a horse like Jasper, is slow, almost invisible, built with the smallest acts of courage and trust. It happened quietly at the Rancho Cielo Recovery Center, in the soft gray mornings and long golden evenings, one gentle moment after another. After that first touch by the fence, something changed in both Ethan and Jasper. The boy, once so still he barely seemed to breathe, started to move with more intention. He'd wake before dawn, pull on his boots, and sit outside on the cool wooden steps, waiting for Jasper's shadow to appear. Jasper, who'd once avoided people at all costs, began to linger near Ethan's window, pressing his nose against the glass as if he was checking in. Even the ranch staff, tough, sunburned folks who'd seen dozens of kids and horses come and go, paused to watch the two of them, sensing a quiet miracle in progress. Lauren made a point to visit every day, even though her official duties often pulled her back into the stress and uncertainty of the investigation. She noticed how Ethan started brushing Jasper's coat, slow and careful, his hands moving with a quiet purpose. At first, the boy didn't say anything, just worked the brush through Jasper's tangled mane, humming sometimes under his breath. Jasper would lower his head, eyes half closed, accepting the touch, as if remembering what it felt like to be cared for. Teresa and the other staff gently encouraged the routine. "Don't push him," Teresa advised Lauren. "Let the boy set the pace. The horse will follow." So Lauren waited, notebook in hand, jotting observations. On a cloudless afternoon, she caught the first whisper, Ethan's lips moving, voice so soft it was barely more than breath. It smelled like gas." Lauren froze, careful not to look too eager, afraid to scare him back into silence. She just kept her eyes on Jasper, brushing the horse's flank while Ethan worked the mane. Ethan's voice came again, a little louder this time, the words broken but distinct. "Boots. Stomped loud." Lauren's pen hovered over her notepad. She didn't ask questions, didn't interrupt. She just recorded what Ethan gave, knowing these fragments could be the thread that led her closer to the truth behind the fire. That day marked the beginning of new routines. Every morning, after breakfast, Ethan would wait for Jasper at the paddock gate. He'd walk beside the Mustang, mimicking the ranch hands as they led horses from stall to field, his stride growing steadier with each day. When the other kids came out to ride or feed their assigned ponies, Ethan kept to himself. But he watched them with more interest, sometimes sketching their horses in his notebook, sometimes just listening to their laughter. Jasper seemed to know his role, keeping close to Ethan, moving slowly and carefully, as if he understood the boy's need for safety. He allowed Ethan to brush mud from his legs, untangle his forelock, and even clean his hooves, a task that required absolute trust. At first, Ethan's hands shook as he crouched by Jasper's massive feet, but the horse never moved, never pulled away. Over time, the fear faded, replaced by a steady confidence. One crisp morning, after an unexpected rainstorm, Lauren found Ethan sitting on the barn's back step, boots muddy, holding the curry comb tight. Jasper stood nearby, dozing in the sun. Lauren sat beside the boy, watching the way the mountains blush pink in the early light. "Jasper's looking good," she said quietly. Ethan nodded, not looking up, but Lauren noticed the way his shoulders weren't hunched so tight, the way his jaw unclenched as he ran the comb through Jasper's thick coat. After a while, Ethan spoke again, his voice a little clearer. He wasn't scared in the fire. He was loud, but not scared. Lauren's heart caught. "Did you see him, Ethan? In the fire?" Ethan nodded, eyes distant. He stood in the smoke. I heard Dusty scream." Lauren set her hand on his, careful, gentle. "It's okay to remember, Ethan." The boy shivered, but didn't pull away. He whispered, "I hid. I was so scared, but Jasper didn't leave." Lauren took a deep breath. She wrote the words in her notebook, her mind working through the possibilities. Jasper had been Cole Turner's horse, and yet, in the chaos of the fire, he'd been seen near the Reyes Ranch, near Ethan, when most animals would have bullied. There was a kind of loyalty in that, something that ran deeper than training. Days passed, each one blurring gently into the next. The staff watched as Ethan grew stronger, more present. He began eating better, sleeping more soundly, his nightmares less frequent. He started helping with chores, cleaning stalls, filling water buckets, stacking hay. He was quiet, but he didn't hide anymore. Even Jasper's coat began to shine again, the dullness fading from his eyes. Lauren continued documenting everything. She wrote about how Ethan would sometimes pause during grooming, lost in thought, then suddenly whisper more details. The boots, they stomped by the barn, smelled like gas, like old paint. These moments were precious, and Lauren collected them carefully, hoping they'd one day help build the case she was quietly assembling against Cole Turner. One afternoon, Teresa approached Lauren with a smile. "You know, we've never seen Jasper like this. He's gentle, protective. It's almost like he's healing too." Lauren nodded, watching Ethan lead Jasper into the round pen, their steps in sync. "Maybe they're both teaching each other," she replied. That evening, a storm rolled over the mountains, thunder grumbling across the valley. Most of the children rushed inside, nervous, but Ethan stood by Jasper's side in the paddock, hands buried in the horse's mane, eyes shut tight. Jasper didn't move, didn't flinch at the lightning, just stood as a living wall between the boy and the world. When the rain finally fell, Ethan laughed, a short, surprised sound that startled even himself. Teresa, watching from the porch, wiped a tear from her cheek. In the days that followed, Lauren saw Ethan whispering to Jasper as they walked the fence line. The words were soft, but Lauren caught snatches. "You're safe now. I'm safe now." These weren't just statements. They were new truths, built one step, one hoof at a time. At the end of the week, Ethan handed Lauren a folded piece of paper, a crayon drawing of Jasper standing in the smoke, his head turned toward a small, huddled figure. On the back, Ethan had written, in shaky letters, "He stayed." Lauren tucked the drawing into her notebook, her resolve hardening. Healing was happening here, not in grand gestures, but in 1,000 small, invisible ways. And as Ethan and Jasper took their next slow steps forward, Lauren knew that the journey, for both of them, was just beginning. When something traumatic happens, sometimes a single object carries the weight of the entire memory. For Ethan, that object was the half-burned leather saddle tag. It was the last piece of Dusty, the horse he loved, and it had survived the fire as if fate intended it to become a clue. For days, Ethan held it close, his thumb rubbing the charred edges whenever he was lost in thought or haunted by nightmares. Lauren Tate, meanwhile, kept her eyes and ears open, quietly collecting fragments of truth like pieces of a broken mosaic. As Ethan's comfort with Jasper grew, so did his willingness to revisit the past. One morning, after brushing Jasper in the shade of the cottonwoods, Ethan stood beside Lauren, his shoulders less hunched than usual. He stared at the saddle tag for a long moment, then reached out and pressed it into her hand. "Can you make it better?" he whispered, his voice trembling with hope and uncertainty. Lauren knelt to his level, meeting his wide, searching eyes. "I can't fix it, Ethan, but maybe it can help us understand what happened." She squeezed his hand, feeling the boy's strength growing day by day. Inside, though, Lauren's mind was already running through the possibilities. The tag was more than a memento. It might hold evidence, something the fire hadn't destroyed. That afternoon, Lauren drove the tag to the small forensics lab in Taos, a cramped, sunlit building where the technician, Amanda Salazar, greeted her with a tired smile. "You're always bringing me the tough ones," Amanda joked, but her eyes softened when Lauren explained whose story the tag belonged to. Amanda set the tag beneath the microscope and began to test for chemical residues. Lauren paced the floor, her mind flipping between the case file and the faces of the ranchers who'd whispered about Cole Turner's temper. Time seemed to stretch thin until Amanda called her over. "Take a look," Amanda said, gesturing to the screen. Lauren squinted at the faint greenish-blue shimmer clinging to the fibers of the leather. "That's fire starter gel, specifically a chemical blend we've seen before. You remember the barn fire out near Arroyo Seco 2 years ago?" Lauren nodded. Cole Turner had been charged, but the case had fallen apart. "Same signature compound," Amanda continued. "Somebody didn't want this fire to be an accident." Lauren felt a cold clarity settle in her chest. The story Ethan had whispered about the boots, the gas, the fear, suddenly gained weight. She thanked Amanda, promising to return if they needed anything more. As Lauren walked out into the dry wind, she realized the burn tag wasn't just a symbol of Ethan's loss. It was now evidence in a growing case. Lauren spent the next days quietly piecing things together. Determined not to stir up town gossip before she had something solid, she visited the local feed store, chatting with workers about the night of the fire. She heard the same names, the same suspicions. Cole Turner, the loner, the man with grudges and scars. Some ranch hands remembered heated arguments over water rights. Others remembered Cole threatening to teach those Reyes people a lesson after being turned away for trespassing. On her rounds, Lauren made sure to stop by the trauma care farm every evening, updating Ethan's grandmother, Maria, on her progress. Maria, wise and weary, thanked Lauren with strong coffee and stories of the old days when disputes and towels were settled with a handshake or a stare. "These days, folks hold on to anger like it's a badge," Maria said, sighing. "But the truth always finds its way out." Meanwhile, at the ranch, Ethan continued to heal in small, steady steps. Jasper followed him everywhere, standing guard as Ethan played in the field or sat drawing in his battered sketchbook. The other children at Rancho Cielo began to notice Ethan's change, too. Some days, he'd even speak to them, short, shy sentences, mostly about horses, but enough to draw them closer. One late afternoon, as the shadows lengthened and the ranch quieted, Lauren pulled Ethan aside. She showed him a magnified photo of the chemical residue from the tag. "Ethan, this is important," she said gently. What you gave me is helping us figure out what happened?" "You're helping us." Ethan nodded, his eyes wide and solemn. That night, Lauren met with Teresa and the staff to share her findings. "If Cole Turner used fire starter gel, that means this wasn't just bad luck. I need to talk to anyone who might have seen him near the Reyes Ranch that night." Teresa called in some of the older ranch hands, men and women who'd worked the land for decades. One, an old cowboy named Tomas, remembered seeing a truck matching Cole's description parked on the ridge at sunset, the day of the fire. "Didn't think much of it then," Thomas admitted. "But now, I reckon he was watching. Waiting." Lauren scribbled down the details, feeling the investigation tighten around Cole Turner like a noose. She didn't want to move too fast. One wrong step, and the evidence could vanish like smoke. Over the next week, Lauren quietly built her case. She kept Amanda's lab report close, comparing the chemical signature from the tag with files from Cole's previous arson arrest. Everything matched. She made discreet calls to the fire marshal, shared her findings, and asked about any new leads from the night of the blaze. But even as the evidence grew, Lauren was careful to protect Ethan from the stress of the investigation. She made sure his days were filled with simple joys, brushing Jasper, playing in the garden, painting murals on the barn wall. She saw how much the little moments mattered. Ethan laughing as Jasper nuzzled his hair, or sitting quietly with the other kids beneath the sprawling cottonwoods. One evening, as the sun set fire to the sky and the fields glowed gold, Ethan approached Lauren with a question. "Do you think Dusty was scared?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Lauren knelt down beside him. "I think Dusty was brave. And I think you were too." Ethan looked away, but there was pride in his eyes. "Jasper wasn't scared either. He came back for me. I know he did." Lauren nodded, her heart swelling with respect for the quiet courage of both boy and horse. Sometimes the bravest thing is just not leaving. As night fell, Lauren reviewed her notes one last time. The evidence was strong: the saddle tag, the chemical residue, the testimony from Tomas and the others. But she knew that Cole Turner would not go down quietly. She would need more. One last piece to bring the truth into the open. And so, as the stars blinked awake over Taos, Lauren promised herself and Ethan that she would not let this case fade away like so many old grudges. The fire had tried to erase everything Ethan loved, but in the ashes, hope and truth still lingered, waiting to be found. If you want to feel the pulse of a small town after tragedy, you go to a community meeting. For the people of Taos, that meeting was held on a dry Thursday evening beneath the creaking beams of the old county hall. The summer air hung thick with dust and unspoken anxieties. Word had spread fast about the wildfire. Who'd lost what? Who to blame? What could be done for families like the Reyeses? The meeting wasn't just about relief. It was about reclaiming a sense of safety, about gathering the scattered pieces of the community and fitting the elm back together, if only for a night. Lauren arrived early, in uniform, but with her badge tucked under her jacket. She'd spent the afternoon wrestling her case notes, mentally replaying each new piece of evidence. The fire starter gel on Dusty's tag, Tomas's memory of Cole Turner's truck on the ridge, the nervous rumors swirling around the feed store and gas station. Yet, as she entered the hall, her focus was on Ethan. The boy sat quietly beside his grandmother, Maria, his hand resting on her weathered arm. He wore his best boots and a plaid shirt that hung a little too loose on his frame, but he looked cleaner and more alive than he had in weeks. Outside, Lauren could hear Jasper's impatient snort from where he was tethered in the shade. She'd brought the Mustang along, on Maria's suggestion, thinking the horse's presence might help keep Ethan calm. Several ranch kids gathered by the fence, pointing at Jasper's big frame and scarred face, whispering stories about the horse from the fire. Jasper, unbothered, kept his head low, chewing steadily, one eye always on the door of the hall. The meeting began with the mayor, a red-faced man named Callahan, banging the gavel and calling for order. Voices rose and fell as neighbors gave updates on damages, insurance, and aid. Relief volunteers promised new fencing, and someone from the Red Cross offered blankets and food boxes. The discussion shifted to safety, how to prevent another disaster, who would monitor the arroyos for lightning or suspicious activity, how to keep families like the Reyeses from feeling alone. But under the polite concern, attention simmered. Lauren could feel it. The side glances, the murmured names. People wanted justice, not just relief. They wanted a face to attach to their fear. When Lauren was called to speak, she kept her tone measured. "I can't share details about the investigation," she said, "but I can promise we're following every lead. We're working with the fire marshal and state authorities. If anyone here saw or heard anything unusual on the night of the fire, please come forward after the meeting." There was a murmur, then silence. People exchanged looks but said nothing. Fear had a way of tightening tongues. As the meeting wound down, Lauren stepped outside, needing air. The sun was setting, turning the sky a bruised purple. Jasper shifted his weight, hooves stirring little clouds of dust. Ethan followed her out, Maria a few steps behind. The boy reached up, brushing Jasper's neck with the back of his hand. Lauren watched the way the horse's ears flicked, one forward, one back, reading the mood. Then the crowd spilled from the hall, voices rising with relief and exhaustion. Among them, a tall, wiry figure moved with purpose: Cole Turner. He wore a faded denim jacket, old boots caked with red earth, and eyes that seemed to flicker from face to face without ever really landing. The crowd gave him a wide berth, but he walked straight toward the fence where Jasper was tethered. As Cole approached, something in the air seemed to shift. Jasper stopped chewing, lifted his head, and pinned his ears flat to his skull, a sign every rancher recognized as warning. The Mustang stomped hard, dust rising in a golden cloud around his feet. He let out a low, guttural snort that sounded more like a threat than a greeting. Ethan froze, hand tightening on Jasper's mane. His eyes flicked to Cole, then to Lauren, searching for reassurance. Cole leaned on the fence, his voice low and rough. "Fine horse you got there. Funny. Looks a lot like the one I used to ride." Lauren stepped closer, her stance protective. "He's not yours anymore, Cole." Cole smirked, but there was a twitch in his jaw. "I heard the boy's been talking." Strange how memories get mixed up when you're scared." Jasper's muscles tensed, every inch of him alert. Lauren could sense the unease spreading through the crowd as people gathered in small clusters, whispering and watching. Maria took Ethan's shoulder, urging him gently back, but Ethan didn't move. Instead, Ethan looked up, voice barely above a whisper, but clear. "That's him. He smelled like Dusty, but wrong." The words hung in the air. Lauren's heart pounded as she registered what had just happened. The trigger, real and undeniable, spoken by the only living witness to the fire's start. Several bystanders turned, eyes narrowing as they took in the scene. Cole's smile faltered. Lauren nodded, keeping her voice steady. "Thank you, Ethan. That helps a lot." She placed a hand on the boy's back, guiding him away as Jasper let out another heavy snort. Stomping again for emphasis, Cole stepped back from the fence, his hands shaking just enough for Lauren to notice. The mayor, catching the mood, called for calm. "Let's head home, folks," he said. "We've all got fences to mend." As the crowd drifted away, Lauren lingered, watching Cole stalk off into the dusk, his shoulders hunched against the weight of 100 suspicious eyes. She turned to Maria and Ethan, kneeling beside the boy. "You did great tonight, Ethan. You were brave." Ethan didn't answer, but his face showed a mixture of relief and fear, as if saying the words had cost him everything, but also given him back a little bit of power. Lauren stayed at the ranch late into the night, replaying the encounter over and over. She made careful notes of Jasper's reaction, Ethan's words, and the look of naked discomfort on Cole Turner's face. She called the fire marshal to report the new development and requested a formal statement from Ethan. The pieces of the case were snapping into place, but Lauren knew the most dangerous phase was just beginning. Back at Rancho Cielo, as the night deepened and the fields grew quiet, Jasper grazed in the moonlight, always keeping one eye on the house where Ethan slept. In the silence, the community's fear began to give way to determination. For the first time since the fire, people felt like justice might actually be possible. And for Ethan, who'd spoken truth in front of friend and foe alike, the long road of healing took another step forward. There's a particular kind of tension that falls over a small town when justice is near, but not yet delivered. A mix of hope and dread, like the heavy air before a storm breaks. In the days after the town hall meeting, Taos felt different. Whispers about Cole Turner grew bolder, neighbors shared stories with Lauren more openly, and families locked their gates at night. But Lauren knew suspicion wasn't enough. She needed evidence, and she needed it soon. The morning after Ethan's quiet, brave accusation, Lauren sat at her kitchen table with 2 mugs of black coffee and a stack of case files spread before her. The evidence was starting to align. The fire starter gel found on Dusty's tag, the testimony from Tomas about Cole's truck on the ridge, Ethan's whispered memories of gas and heavy boots, and now the public confrontation at the town hall. Still, Lauren understood that Cole had slipped away from justice before. If she moved too early, the case could fall apart. If she waited too long, Cole might disappear for good. Lauren picked up her phone and dialed the fire marshal, her voice steady and clear. "I'm requesting a warrant to search Cole Turner's property. We have enough now. Physical evidence, witness statements, probable cause." There was a pause on the other end. Then the marshal's gravelly voice replied, "You'll have it by noon. Be careful, Tate. That man's dangerous." She hung up, feeling both relief and nerves. The warrant was the green light she'd been waiting for. She finished her coffee, buckled on her badge, and called for backup. By midday, she and a pair of deputies were rolling down the dirt road toward Cole's place. A rundown trailer in a crooked shed on the outskirts of town, set back among tangled brush and dry cottonwoods. The air was still, hot and expectant. When they arrived, Cole's truck sat outside, its hood cool but flecked with dried mud. Cole watched from his porch, arms crossed, eyes flat and hard as river stones. "You got a reason to be here, deputy?" he called, a sneer tugging at the corner of his mouth. Lauren held up the warrant, her voice firm. "We're searching your property, Mr. Turner. Please step aside." Cole muttered under his breath, but obeyed, flanked by one deputy while Lauren and the other began their search. The shed was the obvious place to start. The padlock was cheap. Lauren snapped it open, the metal jangling loud in the silent yard. Inside, the shed smelled faintly of gasoline and mildew. And Lauren swept her flashlight over the clutter, broken tack, tangled ropes, empty feed bags, and beneath a pile of tarps, a sack of gas cans. 2 of them still a quarter full, the plastic sticky with residue. She found a pair of old work gloves, the fingertips singed and blackened, and a muddy map pinned to the wall. The map showed the layout of the Reyes Ranch, with 2 routes marked in red ink leading to the barn and the arroyo. Lauren's stomach clenched. This was more than coincidence. She bagged the evidence, photographing every detail. The gloves would go to Amanda at the lab, and the map would be compared against Cole's handwriting on his earlier police statements. She felt a pulse of triumph, but kept her face blank as she stepped out into the sun. Meanwhile, the deputies searched Cole's trailer. In a box under his bed, they found a handful of receipts for fire starter gel, purchased in Taos the week before the fire. They also found a lighter, engraved with the initials CT, and a phone containing angry texts to a contact labeled Rancher Reyes, full of threats and resentment. When Lauren returned outside, Cole glared at her, defiant but sweating. "All you'll find here is a man trying to protect his property. Those gas cans are for my generator. The gloves, hell, every rancher has a pair." "Then you won't mind us taking that for analysis," Lauren replied, motioning to the deputies to secure the evidence. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Before leaving, Lauren glanced at the ridgeline above the shed. A teenage boy stood there, watching from behind a clump of juniper. She called him down, recognizing him as Miguel, a neighbor's son. Miguel was nervous, but when Lauren spoke softly and promised his name would be kept quiet, he agreed to talk. "I saw Mr. Turner," Miguel admitted, voice shaky. "The night before the fire, he was hiking across our field, carrying a can. He said he was hunting coyotes, but I never saw no gun. He headed straight for the Reyes place, down by the arroyo. When I told my dad, he said to keep quiet. Nobody wants trouble with Mr. Turner." Lauren thanked him, writing every word in her notepad. Miguel's statement was the missing link, a direct sighting that placed Cole at the scene the night the fire began. Back at the station, Lauren spent hours cataloging the evidence. She called Amanda, who promised to rush the analysis on the gloves and gas can residue. She sat with the fire marshal, building the case, point by point, until they had a timeline that fit. Though, by evening, Lauren held an official arrest warrant for Cole Turner in her hands. That night, she drove out to Rancho Cielo to deliver the news to Ethan and Maria. She found them on the porch, Ethan brushing Jasper's mane in the golden light. Lauren knelt beside the boy, her voice soft but triumphant. "Ethan, hey, we found what we needed. Cole Turner is going to be arrested. You helped make that happen." Ethan looked at her, uncertain at first, then managed the smallest of smiles. Maria squeezed Lauren's hand, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Lauren. You kept your promise." Later that night, as word spread through Taos, neighbors gathered on their porches, sharing cautious optimism over the fences. Some called Lauren to thank her. Others dropped off fresh bread, jars of jam, or simple notes that read, "We're behind you." For the first time since the fire, the fear seemed to lift, replaced by hope and a stubborn pride. The next morning, Lauren and her team returned to Cole's place. This time, Cole didn't sneer. He barely looked at Lauren as she read him his rights and cuffed his hands. "You got nothing," he spat, but his voice wavered. Lauren met his eyes, calm and unwavering. "We have everything we need." As they drove away, Lauren glanced back at the shed, at the empty yard where secrets had once been hidden. Justice, at last, was being served. Back at Rancho Cielo, Ethan watched the sunrise from Jasper's paddock, feeling the weight in his chest finally begin to lift. The town would still have scars, and so would he. But for the first time, Ethan believed that healing, like justice, could come to even the most wounded places if you just kept digging for the truth. The arrest of Cole Turner sent ripples through Taos, like a stone dropped in a pond, and each circle brought a little more relief to those left smoldering after the fire. For Ethan, the changes came quietly, almost unnoticed at first. A lighter step as he crossed the paddock, a bit of color returning to his cheeks, and longer nights of unbroken sleep. Even his posture seemed to change, as if some unseen burden had finally slipped from his small shoulders. But the biggest change was in his voice. It started during the late afternoon chores at Rancho Cielo, just as the golden hour set the cottonwoods ablaze with light. Teresa and Lauren stood nearby, leaning on the paddock fence, sharing a mug of strong coffee as they watched Ethan groom Jasper. The Mustang stood with unusual patience, as if he understood this was something important, not just for the boy, but for himself as well. Ethan moved methodically, brushing the dust from Jasper's broad back, working a comb through the dark mane. Lauren had come that day, hoping maybe to hear another whisper or two, small fragments like before. She never expected the full sentence, spoken so suddenly it stopped her in her tracks. I was hiding. I heard Dusty scream. I saw Jasper standing in the smoke. He didn't leave. Lauren exchanged a glance with Teresa, whose hand fluttered to her heart. For a moment, neither woman spoke, not wanting to break the spell. Jasper lowered his head, pressing his nose to Ethan's shoulder, as if acknowledging the memory. It was the first time Ethan had spoken more than a few words in weeks, and it was a floodgate. Lauren squatted down so she was eye level with Ethan, her voice soft. "You saw Jasper in the fire?" Ethan nodded, his hand still buried in Jasper's mane. He stayed. I thought everyone ran away, but Jasper stayed near the barn. I heard him. When Dusty screamed, I was so scared, but Jasper was there in the smoke. Lauren took a steadying breath, the significance of Ethan's words not lost on her. This wasn't just about memory. It was about the presence of a friend when the world was burning, the courage to stand with someone even when you're afraid. In Ethan's eyes, Jasper wasn't just a horse anymore. He was a guardian, a living symbol of loyalty. Teresa reached over, gently squeezing Lauren's arm. "You've come so far, Ethan. You know that, right?" The boy gave a shy, half-smile, glancing at the two women. "Jasper didn't leave," he repeated, this time stronger. "He was there for me." As the days slipped by, Ethan's progress became more visible. He spoke more often, especially to Jasper. Sometimes he'd narrate his actions while grooming, explaining what he was doing, sometimes sharing small stories about Dusty or memories of the ranch before the fire. He even started to talk to the other children, at first just a word or two, then full sentences, asking to borrow a crayon, offering to help with chores, laughing at a joke around the dinner table. One afternoon, Lauren brought in official paperwork for Ethan's statement. She set up a quiet corner in the ranch office where the boy felt safe. She let him hold Jasper's tag as he spoke. Ethan told his story with pauses and long silences. But when the words came, they came clear and honest. "I heard boots. I smelled the bad stuff like gas. Dusty was scared. Someone was yelling outside. Jasper was there. When the fire got big, I hid. Jasper was in the smoke. He didn't leave me." Lauren recorded every word, her hands sometimes trembling with the gravity of the moment. Later, she would type up the report for the DA, confident now that Ethan's voice would carry weight in any courtroom. Outside the confines of investigation and paperwork, healing continued in small, everyday ways. The nightmares that had once shaken Ethan awake every night faded into the background. Some nights he'd still whimper, gripping the tag or calling softly for Dusty, but most mornings he woke, rested, sometimes even smiling. He began to eat more at meals, devouring second helpings of Maria's tortillas and beans. When Teresa or one of the staff praised his courage, he met their eyes and gave a small nod, his confidence slowly blooming. Jasper, for his part, had changed too. The Mustang grew more social, tolerating the company of other children and horses. He'd let Ethan lead him around the paddock, even allowing the boy to slip a bridle over his head, a feat that would have been impossible just weeks before. Sometimes Ethan would sit beside Jasper in the pasture, a sketchbook on his knees, drawing scenes from the ranch, or imagine adventures with his horses. Jasper would graze nearby, occasionally nosing the boy for a scratch or treat. One crisp morning, as fog hugged the low fields and the sun painted the sky in the pale pinks, Lauren found Ethan in the barn, humming quietly as he arranged grooming tools. He looked up and smiled at her. "I'm getting Jasper ready for exercise. Teresa said maybe I could help with the round pen." Lauren knelt beside him. "I'm proud of you, Ethan. Not just for being brave during the fire, but for speaking up now. That helps a lot of people." Ethan hesitated, then spoke with quiet certainty. "Jasper helped me. I want to help him too." Lauren's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "You already are, kiddo. You already are." As word spread of Ethan's recovery, more visitors came to Rancho Cielo. Families with children touched by trauma, counselors looking for hope, even local vets who'd heard about the miracle Mustang. A small story in the Taos newspaper painted Ethan and Jasper as unlikely heroes, and for once the attention felt like sunlight instead of scrutiny. Lauren updated the DA's office and case file, but in her heart, she knew the real justice was unfolding here in the dust and sunlight between a wounded child and a scarred horse. The fire had taken so much from them, but it had also forged a bond that nothing could destroy. One evening, as the stars came out over the paddock, Ethan hugged Jasper's thick neck and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving." It was a promise, unspoken but understood. Neither of them would ever have to face the darkness alone again. Spring in northern New Mexico always brings a hint of forgiveness. The black scars on the hills recede beneath green shoots. Swallows return to the cottonwoods. Even the air seems to shimmer with new hope. At Rancho Cielo, that hope took root in a patch of earth behind the barn where Lauren Tate stood with Ethan and Jasper at sunrise, a shovel in each of their hands and the promise of a new beginning in the quiet between them. It started as a simple idea. Lauren had seen firsthand how horses could help heal the invisible wounds left by trauma, and Jasper's steady transformation was proof. But after Cole Turner's arrest and with Ethan's recovery sparking talk in town, she realized what happened between the boy and the Mustang shouldn't be an isolated miracle. It needed to become something more, a way to offer hope to other children whose lives had been torn apart by fire, loss, or violence. Lauren went to Teresa with her idea one evening, her voice filled with a rare, unguarded excitement. "Let's create a place here, a real program, not just for Ethan, but for other kids too. We'll call it Jasper's Field, after the horse who never left." Teresa smiled, wiping her hands on her jeans. "We'll need help, and funding, and volunteers." "We'll find them," Lauren said, her determination unshakable. "People want to be a part of something good again. I'll ask the sheriff's office, local vets, counselors, anyone who cares about giving kids and horses a second chance." It didn't take long for the community to rally. Word spread quickly. There would be a new riding program for trauma-impacted children, with retired service horses as their companions and guides. Maria Reyes offered to donate what was left of her family's insurance money. Local contractors gave lumber and paint. Volunteers from town and neighboring ranches signed up to help build fences, plant wildflowers, and clear the field of rocks. Someone brought a truckload of old tires for jumps and play. A muralist from Santa Fe, moved by Ethan's story, offered to paint the barn wall with an image of Jasper and the boy standing together in a field of gold. Ethan became the first official rider in Jasper's Field. The first day, he was shy, hovering at the edge of the paddock as other children arrived, some withdrawn, some angry, some trembling at the sound of a horse's hoof on gravel. Teresa introduced the new horses. Old patrol geldings, retired barrel racers, even a gentle giant from the sheriff's mounted unit who'd lost his eyesight but not his sense of purpose. Each horse had a story, and so did every child. Lauren watched as Ethan bridled Jasper, guiding him around the ring, showing the other kids how to approach, how to brush, how to listen, not just with their ears but with their hearts. At first, the field was full of uncertainty and nervous energy, but Jasper's calm presence worked a quiet magic. Within a week, shy laughter began to drift across the paddock. Children who hadn't spoken in months started to ask questions. One girl, terrified of horses at first, eventually pressed her cheek to Jasper's shoulder and whispered, "You're not scary at all." Lauren and Teresa worked with counselors to make every day in Jasper's field gentle and routine. There were no expectations for progress, just time spent with the horses, the sun, and the simple work of brushing, leading, feeding, and talking if they felt like it. For some children, the act of holding a brush or walking a horse on a lead was as difficult as climbing a mountain, but every small victory was celebrated, every smile, every word, every step taken with trembling hands. A local artist worked for days on the mural, painting Ethan and Jasper larger than life, sunlight glowing behind them. By the time she finished, the barn wall had become a beacon, visible from the road, drawing families and curious neighbors. It wasn't just a picture, it was a statement, healing lives here. One Saturday, a group of volunteers and local vets gathered in the barn to celebrate the official launch of Jasper's Field. Maria baked trays of pan dulce and beans, and children painted handprints on the new fences. Lauren gave a short speech, her words simple but heartfelt. This place was born from tragedy, but it's become a home for hope. Thanks to everyone here, and to one brave boy and one steadfast horse. We're proving that healing doesn't always need words. Sometimes, all it takes is presence. Ethan's grandmother watched him ride Jasper around the field, her eyes shining with pride. Later, as they sat on the porch together, Maria said softly, "He's smiling in his sleep now, Lauren. I thought I'd lost him, but you all brought him back." Lauren squeezed Maria's hand. "He did most of the work himself, Maria. We just gave him a safe place to do it." As the weeks went on, Jasper's Field became a fixture in Taos. Children from foster homes, from families struggling with grief, from all walks of life began to arrive, each with a different kind of silence to break. Some made fast friends with the horses. Others took weeks just to touch a mane. Ethan, who once couldn't bear to speak, became a quiet leader, offering encouragement, holding out Dusty's old tag as a symbol of strength. The impact rippled outward. Ranchers who'd once been rivals now worked together for the good of the program. Veterinarians donated time and supplies. Counselors reported progress in children who'd been unreachable by traditional therapy. News of Jasper's Field spread beyond Taos. Parents and caregivers wrote to Lauren and Teresa, hoping to find a place for their own struggling children. One evening, as a soft breeze rustled the new wildflowers and the horses grazed peacefully, Lauren sat with Ethan and Jasper beneath the mural. The field glowed in the golden hour, laughter echoing from the paddock. "Are you happy here, Ethan?" Lauren asked. He nodded, resting his head against Jasper's warm neck. "It feels like home," he said quietly. "Sometimes I still think about the fire. But here, it doesn't hurt as much. Jasper makes me feel safe." Lauren smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Ethan's face. "That's all we ever wanted for you." And as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Lauren realized that the greatest victories sometimes came not in courtrooms or headlines, but in fields like this one, where healing was slow but real, and where no one, human or horse, ever had to stand alone again. By late summer, the rhythm of Jasper's Field had settled into something close to peace. Children's laughter mixed with the soft whinnying of horses, and the scent of hay and wildflowers drifted over the paddocks. For Ethan, each day brought something new, sometimes a challenge, sometimes a quiet victory. But he had grown into his new role, as both student and gentle guide, his voice now steady, his smile genuine. Still, Lauren knew healing wasn't a straight line, not for any of them. The world would always send new storms. The next test came in the form of Mia. She arrived one bright Monday morning, brought by a foster mom, with wary eyes and tired hands. Mia was 8, small for her age, with straight black hair cut unevenly at her chin and a habit of keeping her arms wrapped tightly around her chest, as if bracing against a blow. She said nothing as Teresa introduced her to the group, eyes fixed on the ground. flinching at every unexpected noise. The clatter of a drop bucket, the distant bark of a ranch dog, even the rustle of wind through the cottonwoods. Lauren watched from the porch, reading the warning signs in Mia's posture, her jumpy silences. She'd seen these traits before. Trauma had its own language, and Mia spoke it fluently. In the beginning, they gave Mia space. She was offered a soft brush, a quiet corner of the barn, but she wouldn't touch the horses or speak to the other children. At lunch, she picked at her food, always glancing toward the road as if waiting for someone to come take her away. Ethan noticed Mia's fear. He remembered what it was to be silent, to feel lost and alone in a crowd. With Jasper beside him, Ethan became Mia's quiet shadow. He didn't speak to her at first, didn't force her to join the others. Instead, he simply let her see him, brushing Jasper, feeding him apples, whispering gentle words into the Mustang's ear. One afternoon, when the other children were playing tag in the field, Ethan sat alone at the edge of the paddock. He pretended not to notice when Mia crept closer, watching him through the slats of the fence. Jasper grazed quietly nearby, his tail flicking at flies, paying Mia no mind but keeping himself within easy reach. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out Dusty's old leather tag, worn and dark from months of being held and cherished. He ran his thumb over the letters. Then, without a word, he set the tag on the fence post between them and stepped back, giving Mia space. Mia stared at the tag for a long time, her face unreadable. Eventually, curiosity nudged her forward. She reached out with one trembling finger, touching the scorched leather as if it might burn her. Jasper lifted his head, sniffing the air, then took a slow step toward Mia. She flinched, shrinking back. But Jasper simply stood still, his eyes soft, his breathing calm. After a while, Ethan spoke. His voice gentle but certain. He helped me when I was scared. Now he can help you too." The words hung in the air. Mia didn't reply. But the next day, she came to the barn a little earlier, standing slightly closer to Jasper. She accepted a brush from Teresa and, after a long hesitation, reached out to touch Jasper's shoulder. The Mustang didn't move, didn't demand anything, just waited, teaching patience the way only a horse can. Lauren watched these small steps unfold, remembering Ethan's first days at the ranch. It wasn't dramatic, not the way movies might show it. It was slow, like sunlight creeping across a dark room. For days, Mia didn't speak, but she brushed Jasper's mane, fed him slices of apple, and eventually started following Ethan around the field. The other children accepted her in the way kids do, giving her space, inviting her with simple gestures rather than words. On the one afternoon, as a summer storm gathered on the horizon, Lauren found Mia standing in the open paddock, Jasper beside her, Ethan a few feet away. Thunder rumbled in the distance and the wind whipped Mia's hair across her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking, but didn't run. Jasper nuzzled her hand, and for the first time, Mia let herself lean into his touch, her arms finally relaxing. Lauren approached quietly, kneeling beside the girl. "You're brave, Mia." Mia opened her eyes, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. She looked at Lauren, then at Ethan, then at the tag she still clutched in her small fist. No words came, but she didn't pull away. And that was enough. From then on, Mia's world slowly widened. She began to help with feeding, bringing water buckets, and joining the other children when they painted new handprints on the barn fence. She was still quiet, still wary, but she laughed once. A soft surprise sound that caught everyone's attention and earned her a shy smile from Ethan. Lauren, Teresa, and Maria noticed the change. The way the children supported each other. The way the horses offered comfort with a simple nuzzle or a steady presence. Jasper seemed to sense who needed him most, lingering near Mia when she was afraid, following Ethan when he walked the fence line at dusk. One day, as Lauren watched from the porch, Ethan offered Mia the leather tag again. "You can keep it," he said. "It helped me remember I wasn't alone." Mia looked at the tag, then at Ethan, her lips moving as if trying to form words. She pressed the tag to her heart, shook her head, and handed it back. "No, you should have it, but thank you." It was the first thing she'd said all week. Ethan grinned, Jasper nickered, and for a moment the three of them stood together in a hush, deeper than words. The mural on the barn wall now had new handprints below it, each color marking a child who had found comfort in Jasper's field. With every child who healed, the circle widened. Some days Maria would sit on the porch watching the children ride, her voice drifting in a song from her childhood, soft and soothing, the language of home. Lauren knew the work was far from over. More children would come, some with heartbreak too heavy for words. But Jasper's field had become more than a place to recover. It was a place to begin again, to whisper new stories of hope into the dust and sunlight. And with every hesitant touch, every step across the green grass, every new whisper of courage, the legacy of Ethan and Jasper, boy and horse who did not leave, grew stronger, echoing through the valley and into the hearts of everyone who needed it most. If this story touched your heart, hit like and subscribe. Share it with someone who believes healing doesn't always need words, just presence. A year after the fire, peace had found its place at Rancho Cielo, and with it, a sense of belonging that ran deeper than fences or fresh paint. The valley that once bore the scars of disaster now blossomed with wildflowers, the fields alive with the sound of children's laughter, hooves on soft earth, and the quiet songs of old women on shady porches. In the morning haze, the sun painted everything gold, the barn, the mural, the fresh handprints along the fence. Here, even the air seemed to hum with possibility. Jasper, older now, but no less proud, dozed beneath the great mural that bore his image, himself and Ethan, side by side, sunlight breaking through behind them, a field of color at their feet. Sometimes, Jasper's nose twitched in his sleep, as if dreaming of running the high mesas again, or of the boy who'd once found him in the smoke. He had become a legend among the children, a symbol of gentle strength. And in that mural, Jasper lived forever, watchful, patient, and impossibly kind. Children played around the paddocks, their shouts ringing across the fields. For every new arrival, a foster child with haunted eyes, a grieving daughter from a burned-out farm, a boy whose silence echoed with hidden storms, Jasper's field offered the same gentle welcome. No pressure, no promises, just the steady comfort of a horse's presence and the slow, silent magic of belonging. Ethan was different now. He moved through the world with a quiet confidence, taller and stronger, his smile easy and warm. The trauma of that terrible night still lived in the far corners of his memory, but it no longer defined him. Instead, his days were filled with simple joys, morning chores, lazy rides through the grass, afternoons spent helping younger kids find their courage in Jasper's shadow. He'd become something of a mentor, though he never called himself that. Ethan simply remembered what it felt like to be lost, and so he made sure no one else in Jasper's field ever felt alone. Lauren visited often. She'd started as an investigator, her role marked by duty and careful detachment. But over the months, her connection to Jasper's field became something personal, a reason to hope, to believe in small miracles. She'd come by in the evenings, bringing supplies, or to check in with Maria and Teresa, who ran the place with a balance of sternness and endless compassion. Lauren watched the changes in Ethan with quiet pride. The badge on her belt meant justice. But here, she witnessed a different kind of justice, healing, acceptance, and the freedom to become whole again. One evening, as the sun sank low and cast long shadows across the paddocks, Ethan found Lauren leaning against the barn, lost in the mural's painted glow. He was older, but his eyes were still searching, still gentle. Jasper grazed nearby, his coat catching the last of the day's warmth. Ethan slipped beside Lauren, silent for a while, watching Jasper watch the field. Eventually he said, "He still smells like fire, sometimes, but mostly like hay. Like home." Lauren smiled, letting the moment stretch between them. That's the way it goes, I think. The past never leaves us, not really. But it doesn't have to be what we carry every day. It can become something softer, or something that reminds us how far we've come. Ethan considered this. Nodding, he ran a hand along the fence, feeling the sun-warmed wood beneath his fingers. When I was scared, all I could think about was running. Now, I just want her to stay. Help other kids not be afraid anymore. You're already doing that, Ethan, Lauren replied, her voice warm. Every time you show up, every time you help. You and Jasper, you both give the others a reason to trust again. Nearby, Jasper snorted softly, as if agreeing with her. The Mustang was slowing down these days, but his presence was still commanding, his eyes still bright. Lauren watched as Mia, the quiet girl from weeks before, led Jasper gently around the ring, her face open and relaxed, no longer shying from sudden noises. Other children trailed behind, taking turns brushing his coat, whispering secrets, letting the peace of his company work its quiet magic. The mural on the barn grew every season, new handprints and details added by each child who found solace there. Ethan and Jasper remained at the center, unmoving, eternal, a symbol of resilience and healing. The mural was more than paint and color. It was a living memory, a reminder that the worst things we survive can become the roots of something beautiful. As night crept in, the volunteers called the children in for dinner, and the paddocks fell quiet. Jasper stood beneath his mural, swishing his tail, eyes half closed. Ethan lingered a moment longer, leaning into Jasper's side, breathing in the scents of hay, earth, and a faint trace of old smoke. Maria, ever watchful, came to stand beside Lauren. You know, some stories don't really end, she said. They just settle, like dust after a storm. Lauren nodded, understanding. Maybe that's what peace is. Just learning how to let the dust settle, to let what's left be enough. They watched as Ethan joined the others, laughter echoing in the twilight. For a moment, Lauren closed her eyes, listening, letting the sound fill her with gratitude. Here, in this patch of earth brought back from ashes, healing lived, in hoofbeats and whispers, in gentle touches, in the soft, steady breathing of horses at rest. Before heading home, Lauren snapped a photo of the mural. In the evening light, the sky behind it, painted in streaks of purple and gold. She posted it online with a simple message. Some stories are best told in presence, not words. If you believe in second chances, share this. That photo traveled far. Families across the country wrote to Jasper's Field, asking about the program, about the miracle Mustang, about the boy who learned to speak again. And though not every letter could be answered, the spirit of the story reached beyond Taos, carried by hope. As the stars came out and a hush fell over the land, Jasper dozed beneath his mural, the peace of the field wrapping around him like a blanket. Ethan paused at the barn door, looking back one last time. The past was still there, painted in memory, but the future stretched wide and open, glowing in the moonlight. Some stories don't end. They become the land itself, quiet and enduring, settling like dust after the storm.